Kwanza, it is true we disarmed 400 National Police reservists who were serving in Trans Nzoia. And there was a reason, because the NPRs were being misused. Number two, Trans Nzoia is fairly peaceful, except along the border, small issues. So we will be vetting and returning on a needs basis a smaller number of NPRs, but the number of 400 NPRs in Trans Nzoia was disproportionate with the challenge that we have in that county compared to other counties that are a little more needy. Then finally, the member for Imenti North asked about passports. When I assumed office, passport was a crisis like no other. Kenyans were waiting for a year, 6 months, 3 months, 8 months. They were bribing. They had to bribe to get passports. We had no printers, and so forth and so on. Today, we have not only paid the pending bills to the suppliers, we have enough printing equipment for personalization of passports. We have even upscaled our system, that is the ICT system, and we have cleared the backlog from 784,000 when it was at the highest, and today there's no backlog. We are issuing passports within 7 days, starting 1st of August, today. That was our deadline. We complied with that deadline 4 weeks ago, at the beginning of July. Our next deadline is therefore to bring the passport waiting period to 3 days by 1st of November this year. And we are on course. I am very happy. This is one area where we've made a lot of progress. Of course, there are small challenges here and there. We believe that we've not eradicated corrupt staff completely. We have a new crop of staff, about 120, but we are not sure that corruption has been eradicated from that directorate. And we are working on that to ensure, we'll be working on that if we are approved, to ensure that we clean up the whole place. With regard to IDs and Huduma number and Maisha number, the reason for the 10-year limit is because of technology, because unlike the ID that we are used to, the second generation ID we have, the third generation ID is a technology card, and technology keeps on growing old, and therefore that's why we have a 10-year period, and that's why even passports, they normally have a time frame. You cannot have a passport for life. That is the idea. It is not to punish Kenyans. The card has a bit of technology chips, and we want to upgrade that chip based on the security threats that will be identified by that time. The Maisha number issue is before court. We hope we will vacate the orders that were issued 2 days ago, because the problem we are having with delays with issuance of IDs is because of court orders. Last year, between November and March this year, there was a court injunction against us issuing IDs, which brought a huge backlog of almost 600,000. We cleared that backlog. We were actually left with 92,000 with those in the waiting list. And then another court injunction was issued again 2 days ago. We hope we'll be vacating it by Friday, hopefully, so that we can be able to move on with issuing IDs to the people of Kenya. I submit.
Master.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me take you to the budgets. Following the recent government budget cuts across all sectors, what innovative ways will you use to mitigate the negative impacts of the budget cuts in the Ministry of Interior and National Security? Secondly, what will you prioritize, if approved, What programs will you prioritize, and what will be the impact of implementing those priorities? And Kenyans are also asking, because of the unemployment situation in the country, is the recruitment of police officers affected by the budget cuts? And if not, what innovative ways, again, will you use to recruit them differently? Because as it stands, Kenyans are concerned that recruitment of police officers has become a preserve of the rich or of those who can afford to sell some land. So how are you going to make sure that employment opportunities in the Ministry of Interior are open to all Kenyans, irrespective of their tribe, their religion, where they come from, whether they have money or not? Thank you.
Hold, Professor. Yes, Missy, take those two.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prof, you'll go down the history as the first minister to be vetted twice in one term, one presidential term. Of course, the others who are coming, but for now you are the first, and that history will not be, will be there forever. And I'll take you back to what you said in the Senate, that history is replete with strong and powerful dictators who were brought down by the power of the people. And I dare say you've been brought back here to this vetting by the power of the people. I want to refer you to an event because you are a member of the National Security Council. This is the core of the security of this nation. I want to refer you to an event in history in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis, something I know you are much aware of because you are an international law student or professor. During this time, the then president of US, J.F. Kennedy, had a standoff with the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev. And there was an ex-com committee members, comprising of 14 members, almost akin to what we have here as the National Security Council. All those 14 members agreed that to deploy. It took J.F. Kennedy brother's advice to do otherwise. I'm not asking you to be consulting your brother, but if it were not for the brother's advice, then we could have experienced the first nuclear war to the destruction of the world. Now, I look at the events that have happened here as a result of either good or bad decision of the National Security Council. And just like somebody said that there is always an inclination towards consensus, even if a decision is bad, that the committee of people could easily incline towards psychological consensus to the destruction or to the results of a bad decision. Does National Security Council of this republic also suffer from groupthink? Groupthink in a way that there is no devil's advocate to give an alternative decision making that can save the country. Then, Speaker, if you may allow me the last, very brief. You've tried to explain the donning of the uniform, the police uniform. What surprises me, Prof, is that you give instructions to police, you give press conferences, you are adorned in the uniform of the police. But when it comes to the crimes committed against humanity by the police, that's where you say the police are independent. How independent is your uniform?
Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the budget cuts, we will prioritize what we consider the 5 biggest national security threats in our programming. And those are the threats of terror, organized crime, drugs, the need for drug controlling narcotic drugs, the fight against climate change, and also extremism in its various forms, religious, political, or whatever extremism, because extreme behavior can annihilate the nation. With regard to recruitment, going forward, we will ensure that each and every Kenyan, boy or girl who is recruited can be accounted for, because in the past we've had so many claims of corruption and so many claims of favoritism, and therefore going forward it's going to be demanded from the police that they account for every recruitment slot that they fill. We have a big problem of corruption in the country, and we hope the National Police Leadership Academy and the programs we want to put there as we look for succession management and new managers of security will be able to fight corruption in the National Police Service. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Amisi asked me, I think the first was just a comment. He said, I've been brought here by the power of people, and I want to say happily, yes. Happily, yes. With regard to the second, and I say happily because it's important for public officials to be put under scrutiny and be measured using the highest possible threshold. So I have no issues, I have no problems. Even if I'm brought here 20 times, I will happily come back and try and explain myself to the people of Kenya and to the representatives of the people of Kenya. I've been asked, the second one, the last one, from the Honorable Amisi, was on whether the National Security Council is suffering from groupthink, and the answer is no. I submit.
Mukami. Honorable Mukami.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to ask our Waziri one question from a police officer who is concerned. I understand there is a court battle in the court since 2018 between the police constables. There are those who are earning higher salaries than the others. That means there are those who are in job group J, they are earning more salary, and that is why they had gone to the court, because they want to understand why there is a discrimination. The other question, it's about our police officers. Waziri, as you know, our officers really do a lot of work. What policy are you going to put into place to motivate our police officers? Because there are those officers who have stayed in one station for over 20 years. They've never been promoted, they've been never transferred, they are just there in that station. So we need to motivate them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mishi, Honorable Mishi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, I want to ask Professor one question. Professor, as the women of this country, we are shocked and we are sick to see the rising number of femicide cases. In fact, we are really shocked when we saw the bodies which were discovered at the quarry, because all the bodies were for ladies or other women. I don't know what is the root cause of this. What contribute to all this? Who slept on the job? We need to know some answers on these issues. Second, Honorable Chairman, I know he has answered issues on the issue of officers using excessive force during protest, but I also wanted to hear from him, what future plans do you have to ensure that future protests are going to be managed in a way that there'll be no loss of lives? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Professor.
Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard...
Hold, Professor Emaso, you have a point of order?
I think the nominee forgot to respond to mine.
Which one?
It was on the budget and the issue of recruitment.
He did.
I think I can respond together.
He did.
Okay.
He did, very clearly.
How independent is your uniform?
I know it was misleading you to raise that issue.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the police officers who have been in court about salaries, mainly these were graduate police constables, people or officers who joined at constabulary level during their time, they went to school and studied for a degree. They have been arguing that they need to be taken straight to inspectorate. And there has been a long court battle. As soon as that court matter is settled by the apex court, we'll implement whatever decision will come from our judiciary. With regard to that matter going forward, we will implement the recommendations of the Maraga Task Force, which creates two-tier police service where you can serve in the lower ranks, and the academic requirements are different. You serve from constable to senior sergeant, or you enter the police service at inspectorate level if you are a graduate as a cadet, so that we professionalize a little more the police service and also expedite leadership generation through cadets who can assume responsibility as OCSs and commanders at county level and so forth, to avoid a situation where you have officers seeking to extend their time in office at senior levels simply because of a lack of generation of younger commanders. With regard to the motivation, we are working with the National Police Service Commission, and if I am approved, I will proceed with this discussion to provide a clearer policy on promotions, transfers, and some form of reward system which will help motivate our officers. At the moment, before I left office, we were implementing the 3-year transfer policy. I think we were at 45% compliance because of the logistical and the financial implications. If I am reappointed, if I am approved by this House, I will complete that 3-year transfer policy to make sure that it happens. And also, we will have a fast-track promotion arrangement for officers who do very well. For example, if you're a county police commander, you help in reducing crime, you help in fighting femicide, you help in fighting you have certain targets which you meet. You should be promoted faster than somebody else who is in the same level, but their performance indicators are in the negative. Finally, I've been asked 2 questions by the Honorable Mishimboko. The first one is on femicide. It is true, the cases of femicide we are seeing are worrying for the country, and it's also true we have critical gaps, especially at the lower levels of our policing and security apparatus, both the National Intelligence Service, the National Police Service, and also Ngao. And those are things that we need to work on to avoid situations like what we are seeing. The incident that happened in Kware is quite devastating, quite a grave breach of the security of our women, and it's something that I'm taking with all seriousness. Finally, what plans will I have if I am approved by this House to ensure that we do not have loss of life when citizens exercise their right under Article 37? I will be finalizing for publication the guidelines under the Public Order Act, the one I explained earlier, not to take away the light, but to facilitate, to create an environment where it can be enjoyed, to create responsibility on those who are having protests. Because if you say you have a protest to Parliament, for example, and the designated area for protests can only accommodate 1,000 protesters, you cannot say, I want 2 million protesters outside Parliament, because it's not feasible. So we'll have to give those guidelines so that as Kenyans can enjoy these rights while respecting the rights of others in accordance with the Constitution. I submit.
Sharia.
Thank you.
Honorable Shuri.
CS nominee in the court of public opinion and in some independent surveys done in this country, the Ministry of Interior and National Administration has been identified as the one with the highest prevalence of corruption in this country. How do you intend to address this menace if approved?
Let's take Honorable Russ also.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Professor, when a Kenyan reads a Gazette notice of Kenya Gazette, they will tend to believe that is the true reflection of a policy direction from government. In March this year, you closed the Ilo gold mine in Moyale, that it will be closed for 30 days following the skirmishes that had taken place. But since then, over 30 lives have been lost, including that of security officers. That particular area has turned out to be a black market for mineral entrepreneurs, and the citizenry have generally lost faith in government and also in the security agency. My question to you, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to reaffirm the community's faith in that the government does what it says it will do, and also that the security of that area, because Dabel has the inhabitants community, that the security is restored. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, those of us who come from the border areas, we have very porous borders. There's influx of arms, contraband, drugs, and also illegal immigrants. But what we are experiencing also is so many roadblocks and checkpoints. Some actually are rent seekers as opposed to for purposes of security. Professor, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to ensure there is security for Kenya, but also the communities that are traversing or traveling on those roads are not, to an extent, inhumanly disadvantaged? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Professor.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the question by the Honorable Shuri, it is true corruption
Getting educated.
is a big cancer in the national
My serious concern,
in the public
really very serious
sector
concern,
of our country, the two levels of government and the three arms of government.
is there are too many moving
In our
things
assessments,
in education. And the first thing which I want to take up with you is NACONEC.
I have said earlier, we
The
have
idea of
identified
coming up with NACONEC
5
from the beginning
existential threats to our
is to
country's
allow
future.
access to education
Terrorism
for the
and
nomadic
violent
children,
extremism is one of them.
the pastoralists, the most marginalized people in this country.
Crimes is the second.
But within very few years,
Narcotic drugs,
the NACONEC has been turned into some sort of paltry
the fourth one,
for
climate change
all
and how
disadvantaged
it is
enclaves in
creating,
Kenya, including Nairobi,
of livelihoods
Mombasa,
and
Kisumu,
building
and all
conflicts
that.
among communities.
Going forward, if the House approves your
And
nomination,
therefore, going forward, if I am
how will you help
I am going to
in
escalate
terms of bringing back NACONEC online
policies
to address the mandate for which it was founded
corruption
in the first place?
organs of
secondly,
the national security that have
it is
the
this
Ministry
issue of
Interior,
Tibet.
but also
I think
propose
honorable
for the
colleagues
rest
have
of the
touched
country,
on,
the rest
but
of
I
the,
want to repeat.
government and public
The idea
sector,
of having Tibet
measures
institution
that can help us secure the country,
is
because
once
it's no
we
longer
lost the
an
middle
issue
level
of the corruption by
colleges,
the police. It's an
I think
issue
in
of
the late
corruption,
80s
being able to actually
and
threaten the
90s,
country's future. And therefore,
then
this
Tibet
top
is
five
found that
of our
this is
national
a
security
serious
threat.
gap in our education,
Lastly,
particularly on the side of technical skills.
About Hilo, it is
With
true.
the current
gold mine in
funding model,
Moyale,
a lot of those youngsters are likely to drop out of those institutions. What would be your plan or strategy to make sure that those learners remain in those institutions until they qualify? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Miners who had come even some
Nominee answer those three.
So we
Thank you, Honorable
considerations.
Speaker.
We talks with the Ministry of Mining to see how an orderly resumption of mining activities can happen. I was there physically in June. I was
I'll start with the Honorable Mbui's question
this
on
happened.
the low capitation.
In the interim,
The
we
low
have lost
capitation
a few
is
people
an
because
issue
of
that
the
is
illegal
tied
activities,
to
around there, even
the
as we
low
speak,
funding
very low
in
skill
the
vote.
government. As I
We
said
lost
earlier,
two
the
police
government was
officers
supposed to be
in the
funding
last
80%, but
So
the
as soon
capitation
as
that